Errol Gerson is amazing, an amazing storyteller, and that in particular, we can reference that at the end of this podcast.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure.
Okay, that's amazing, yes.
But his point, and even in Errol's point, much like Lori's, was that it build the habit, build the emotional muscle to look for the good, to look for opportunities to be grateful, look for opportunities to be happy. And even in those moments when you're not happy or joyful or grateful, whatever emotion you are feeling in the moment, be present. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Joe, Dr. Energy Piazza.
RaRa is in the house. Kathryn Asaro Myers.
Welcome back to BU Network Podcast, Conversations Worth Having. On our podcast, you can expect 3 things. 1, the BU guest moment. 2, the BU moment. And 3, the BU final moment.
As promised, we are giving you a very special audible on each show. Your job, well, not your job, it's to find it. You know the game Where's Waldo? Well, here we will ask you to listen for that audible.
Let's jump right into living with sadness. And I'm laughing. That's an inappropriate response, but I just recently had something that made me think about it. I'm reading at the moment, so our audience should know that. Living with sadness. How does sadness differ from depression? We talked about that earlier, that depression and sadness can go hand in hand.
Right.
And we know there are many things that trigger that. Well, we both have an article that we looked at from Psychcom. And it talks about the difference of sadness and depression and the symptoms of depression and how to treat them and what are some of the things that we can do. So I'll just read a little something to give it some context.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so everyone has a bad day now and again. A painful argument with the spouse, the loss of a beloved pet, getting passed over for a promotion, and other everyday disappointments. We can certainly name them, and they make us feel awful. Right. Speaking to people that are not able to help us on the phone, like that just happened to me. Sadness is a normal emotion that should fade away over time. But when that melancholy isn't temporary, the danger of depression may be on the horizon. Sadness is a normal human emotion that everyone feels from time to time, says Johnny Williamson, MD, medical director at Timberline Knolls, a resident treatment facility in Illinois. It is often associated with a difficult life event, such as a loss of a loved one, a breakup, or other hurtful events that results in an untoward outcome. When a person feels sad, sadness is often the dominant emotion. But there can be periods of levity and less severe mood. Sadness can also sometimes be relieved by venting. That's where our friends come in handy. Crying, exercising, that's fantastic, or other methods of releasing emotion. Right. Sadness varies in intensity and duration. We know that, according to Dr. Williamson. But a defining feature is that it is a temporary feeling. Eventually, it fades and ultimately resolves. If sadness continues to intensify, does not eventually fade, or lasts for a prolonged period, you should seek support from a mental health professional because depression is a possibility, he adds. So let's talk about that, Dr. Energy.
Sure, absolutely.
Let's talk about things that make us sad. And then let's see if from there, not to make it a depressing podcast, but let's see, people can recognize this. We can relate to sadness and things that bring us down. So let's talk about, we'll maybe banter back and forth. I wake up in the morning and I see it's really not a nice day out and I planned on going for a walk. That can make me sad.
Right. Just looking forward to an outing with a good friend, like going for coffee or something. And then for whatever reason, it gets canceled. That can make me a little bit sad or even upset sometimes, but definitely sad.
Right. Like we're counting on someone to either visit us or we're going to visit them. It doesn't have to be a physical visit. It could be a call, a Zoom like this. This is sad if we're waiting to speak with someone because we've prepared and we have our thoughts all lined up. And now that person can't make it for whatever reason.
Right.
I know what it's like, Joe, Dr. Energy, when we talk to the older people, the elderly. You know, sometimes people say, "What, do you have nothing else to do all day long? You're just waiting for me?" Yes. Sometimes the elderly are waiting all day long for that visit or for that phone call. And when sometimes we're busy and we're thinking, well, I just can't make it today. But that's what they're looking forward to. That I look forward to things all day long when I know I'm going to speak to you. I look forward to that. And I know that it's going to happen, but I would be sad to think that I'm ready and prepared and something better came along. That makes me sad.
It's one of those things where, you know, we might think it's just a little, for us, it's just a little part of our day, but for somebody else, it might be the whole part of their day. You know, there's a quote, I can't remember who said it, or a saying that says, you know, to the world, we're just one person, but to one person, we may be the world. Right. So it's all about perspective. Who is looking at this as an important thing and who's not looking at it as an important thing. And it's those, you know, when we have those expectations of something happening and then it doesn't happen, we get, you know, lots of different emotions. It can be angry, it can be upset, it can definitely be sad. And if the thing that we're looking forward to or had an expectation of was something super important, then even depression could be a longer term effect for sure.
Right. Now, let me ask you this, because sadness, sometimes we don't even know we're sad. You know, you walk around and we just have that general feeling of blah. We're just thinking, well, maybe I'm just a little monotone today.
Feeling kind of gray.
Yeah. 50 Shades of Gray.
Yeah. We're back to that, are we? No, that's another podcast.
Yeah, but it always comes around to that again. And what happens when we're walking around and we just don't know what's making us feel like that?
Right.
We don't know what caused it. It could be something that we haven't really talked about. You know, communication. If we talk about sadness, sometimes people say, I don't want to hear it or I don't want to talk about it. But not talking about something can really cause a problem.
Right. I know that, you know, in the work that I do as a chiropractor and working with people as they're processing physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual aspects of their lives when they're getting adjusted, because we know that you can't separate the physical from the emotional and the mental. It's all interrelated. All those systems in the body are connected, and neuroscience is actually even showing us that. And I find what sometimes happens is that we get overwhelmed by an emotion, for example, sadness, and we don't have the resources or the energy to deal with it in the moment. And so we kind of push it down a little bit and say, okay, this too will pass and I'll get over it. And we try to push the emotion away rather than just allowing ourselves to experience and feel it. And then it gets locked away and it comes up somewhere down the road, and it can be triggered by pretty much anything. When we get stressed out or by another similar event that caused similar to the original event that caused the sadness. And all of a sudden we're just walking, like you said, we're walking down the street and all of a sudden we feel sad and we don't know why. And I think that one of the things that happens when we have that feeling and we don't know why we have that feeling is then we try to figure it out. And we get all up in our head again and try to figure it out. Oh, it's this. Is it connected to this? Is it connected to that? And instead of just allowing that feeling of sadness to wash over us and let it process through our nervous system, then it's much easier to let it go. Because if we start to try and think about it and figure it out, it becomes now a mental process rather than an emotional one.
Becomes a problem.
Right. And then we're actually living the idea of the emotion, not the actual emotion itself. And this is how it becomes a long-term, almost like a habit, actually. We start to have a habit of sadness or angry or upset or happiness or joy. But choose the habit that works for you.
You mean like cranky people? Somebody that's just habitually, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Walking around with that sad feeling or that sad face, or you ever see someone, is that what you're referring to?
It could totally be that person. I mean, you remember we did that podcast, the episode with Lori Delk, with your Gratitude Girls partner, and she talked about finding that just even the smallest thing that you can be grateful for can shift around your day, and how the more and more you work with gratitude, the more the habit is built, and then it becomes almost like an addiction, right? You get addicted to feeling grateful and the good feelings that it gives you. And there was another one. There's that podcast that you and I both like, The Future, with Chris Joe. And he interviewed Errol Gerson. And Errol tells the story of telling a student to be grateful for his bed, for giving him a good night's sleep. And there's a whole story that goes along with that. I highly recommend everybody out there listens to that particular episode. It's very, very powerful.
Errol Gerson is amazing, an amazing storyteller, and that in particular, we can reference that at the end of this podcast.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes for sure.
Okay, that's amazing, yes.
But his point, and even in Errol's point, much like Lori's, was that it build the habit, build the emotional muscle to look for the good, to look for opportunities to be grateful, look for opportunities to be happy. And even in those moments when you're not happy or joyful or grateful, whatever emotion you are feeling in the moment, be present with it. And then for me, one of the things I like to do is, instead of saying this too shall pass, because that puts it in the future like it's always going to happen and it's not actually happening in the moment. So I like to say this too is passing.
Right. We talked about that in another podcast.
Right. So it's much more of an action happening in the now, and it allows me the space and the room to actually be with that emotion, with the sadness in the moment. Because I've had moments of sadness. I've lost loved ones. I've gone through breakups and all of that kind of thing. And did I feel sad? And sometimes some feel depressed, but without having a clinical depression. Yes, absolutely. Depressed is I like to think of depressed as sort of a really extreme version of sadness. And then a clinical depression goes even beyond that.
Right.
So we all go through all the ranges of emotion, because guess what? We're all still humans.
We are superhumans.
Humans being, right? We're humans being. So.
Well, let's talk about the effect of this physical, our bodies doing something physical. We'll talk about exercise, because we both have a great history about that. So we'll talk about the body not exercising and someone feeling sad. And then we'll talk about the person embarking on exercise.
Right.
Feeling sad, and what happens, and what could happen, and what happens most of the time. So let's talk about that. You're feeling sad and you're lethargic and you're not doing very much, and maybe there's an injury, or maybe it's just in your mind, you just don't feel like doing anything, you're not up to it.
Right.
And what could happen versus that person that says, okay, I'll go for a walk, or I'll go into the gym, or I'll do this yoga, or I'll do what is that trigger? Let's identify this for our audience in case they're having any of these emotions. What could bring them right out of the sadness?
Well, the great thing about exercise is that it changes your body chemistry almost immediately. And in fact, there's a lot of research out there that shows that 20 minutes of walking has even a greater effect than any antidepressant medication for clinical depression.
Right.
So we know that there's chemical changes happen in the body and the brain by exercise. We get that people who run or cycle distances, you get that runner's high or that cyclist's high, that exercise high, where we get all those endorphins, those feel-good chemicals in the brain coursing through our body, and we feel amazing when we exercise. And there's even some people that actually get quite addicted to that. But it can change how we're feeling, because not only does the chemistry of our body change, our posture changes, right? Generally, when we're feeling sad and depressed or lethargic or apathetic, we usually have our shoulders all rounded and we're all hunched over and kind of looking down at the ground, versus when you're exercising, you start to stand up straighter because you feel better. And then it becomes much easier to find more, for lack of a better word, positive emotions rather than being immersed in the negative emotion. So exercise is amazing way to shift your emotions to a more positive state. And I know you've worked in the past with exercise and worked with clients both from a psychotherapy practice and exercise. So I'd love to hear your take on this.
Right. Yes, I was going to thank you for your comments, and thank you for the question. I was going to talk about how I myself use my famous 7.5 pound dumbbell as my friend throughout the course of the day, no matter what, because this triggers, right? I'm training my body and training my mind and just training myself that this is the thing that really turns a switch, right? It puts turns on the right switch. So with clients, with friends, with just observing people in general, we can see, and I'll often ask my friends for an appointment. We always go back to the things that we know works, right? Not just necessarily old habits. I will take appointments to the yoga studio. I'll say, meet me for Pilates, meet me for yin, meet me for yoga. And I still do it. We're talking about over 25 years later. To me, it's a go-to. It's like, meet me at the studio and we'll take it from there. Right. Now, I basically could just set up shop there, because for me, this is just put on your gym clothes and talk to me, because this is how we break the layers or peel the layers. I don't say break them. We peel the layers, because when we're in our suit and our heels and we're in our suit and a tie and we're having a conversation, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's something about, a pair of gym shorts and a gym shirt and sneakers and having the conversation, and maybe taking some push-ups in between and taking a minute to think, am I going to, really manage these 250 pound dumbbells? Not that I would manage them, but if I'm talking to a gentleman, I wish, right? So there's something about the mind and how it's focused and having those conversations versus having a conversation, sitting in the chair. There's nothing wrong with that, but I'd rather be moving when I'm talking and listening. And I don't mean running around the block and not looking at someone, but really focusing on breathing, on the person's concentration. I love to see if we can basically sit quiet for 30 seconds together, to breathe, to take the rhythm. This is so important in the type of session bridging therapy that I embark on with my clients, because I can notice the rhythm. It doesn't matter what someone's weight is. And I don't say touch your toes if you're wearing a shirt and tie, but how one puts on their sneakers and how one gets on the floor and gets off the floor really tells you something about someone. Sure. If I say, let's sit on the floor, and I'm crawling one way, and let's get up, and I'm using the wall to get up versus I just, cross my legs and stand up, that tells me something. It tells me about my balance, perhaps my confidence. Perhaps it tells me, so many things that I don't have on, tight Spanx, so I can do it.
or just your energy level for the day.
Exactly. And practicing that simple getting down on the floor and getting up. So I really enjoy having the physical aspect of sessions with people. I've actually taken clients into my swimming pool at where I live. Right. So these are the female clients. And we will go into the sauna and have the conversation. And I believe that this is extremely therapeutic. I've gone away with my clients overnight. I've gone to spas and to different places so that we could actually break down those barriers and be physical. I've gone for walks in minus 30 degree weather at St. Anne's Spa. So anyway, these things do create a different vibration.
Absolutely.
And here we are talking about sadness, but yet my energy picked up because I started to realize that the activity and the exercise just elevated my mood. So as our audience is listening to our podcast tonight, this episode might be like, sadness. And then suddenly we can pick it up. Mm-hmm. One of the things I was reading was what are some of the things we can do during the course of a day So let's just say that it doesn't necessarily have to make us sad, but some of the things we can do to remain a happy person. So we talked about this earlier. Check your bank account. Now,
again, the emotion that you feel would depend on what you find.
Exactly. Or can you get into your bank account and check it? Is what you're looking for there? Is it not there? How do you do it as a regular basis? Are you nervous? Do you start sweating before you do that? Or is it such a common thing? Is it something that you do like your emails? And we talked about this before. It's not being addicted to the phone. It's the feeling that we get from what the phone gives us. So this article that I was reading was about doing certain things during the course of a day that can keep us happy or not.
Right.
I recommend we look at our daily habits and see, are those habits of happiness?
Yep.
Do we emotionally eat? Do we eat without someone, what that's called, right? When nobody's looking and you're eating to the closet. Would that be the right phrase about eating when nobody's watching you?
Right.
Yeah. So there's all these types of habits that we have, and let's look at them and see which ones are the happy, healthy ones and which ones are the sad ones. And why do we keep the sad habits? Maybe we don't ask anybody, but it would be nice to ask a friend. Hey, I do this. What do you think about it? Right. I do this in the morning. Do you think that's healthy? Or do you think that that's a good idea? Or what do you do? I do recommend when it comes to feeling sad to find a good friend, find a professional. Obviously, I'm going to say find a professional and a professional friend and talk to someone about it. Don't keep it to yourself because it's not going to resolve itself by ignoring it. What goes away by ignoring it? Ice? Snow?
Eventually, it depends on where you live, I suppose, and how long it takes to go away.
All right. And then your snowman is gone and then you're sad.
Yeah. Well, sad because the snowman's gone, but happy because it's springtime.
Because it's spring. But then there's that sad little carrot all on the ground because the nose is there and now it doesn't have the head and the body. So what other than that snowman in the snow, we shouldn't ignore things and expect it to go away. It doesn't. We need to address it, or we should address it in a healthy fashion so that sadness does not become the primary baseline emotion for us.
Right. And I think that's the big thing is where's the like you said, the baseline or the center of gravity of your day, or however you want to call it. What's the bar? What level do you set the bar at for yourself of how you want to experience the day? And you referenced that article about habits that you could do every day. And there was one in there. I think it was a Forbes article, right? That we looked at there.
Yes.
And we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Okay, great.
And there was one there about choosing comfort for your future self over comfort right now. And, in our culture today, we often choose the easy thing, the comfortable thing right now. I want some comfort food. I want, like you mentioned about eating in the closet or emotional eating, right? It's we want to feel good right now. And so we create, and we end up creating a habit of every time we feel sad or we feel unfulfilled, we go and, for instance, eat, or for some people, they go and exercise, or we go and whatever the activity, whatever the habit that you do. But what if you instead choose to be with that uncomfortableness in the moment, knowing that it would choose it would create more comfort for your future self and build a more resilient and adaptable you by not doing that. Right. So in other words, be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable in the present moment to feel more comfort and build a more resourceful you down the road. Or because it's in those taking those actions on a regular basis, those micro habits that builds the long-term habits.
Right, to do the work. Well, if I may, let me read this article from Forbes. And this article is about the 5 remedies against sadness used by extraordinary happy people. Okay. Would you like to hear what they do?
Sure, I'd like to hear a little bit about that.
Okay, so let's see if I can read the first part and then I'll give it to you in a condensed version. Okay. Your smile is right for your brain, your body, and those others around you. Smiling activates the release of feel-good messengers while releasing dopamine, endorphins, and serotonin into your bloodstream, making your body relax and your mind breathe. Endorphins are natural painkillers, 100% naturally produced by your own body. Smiling is also infectious because the part of our brain responsible for the facial expression of smiling is located in the cingulate cortex, that is an unconscious automatic response area.
Yes.
So our smile makes others around us smile and vice versa. Now here are 5 points. I don't know if this is written. Give yourself a pleasure. Chocolate. Let me make sure I go right to that. Yes, chocolate is a powerful antidepressant.
Yes.
And a good glass of wine gladdens the soul. I'm reading this from Forbes.
Is this a single mom or something writing this article? I don't know.
I'll tell you when
that's stereotyping, I know, but
yeah, okay. I'm going to let our audience to answer you on that one.
Yeah. I'm at the risk of getting in trouble with some of our audience. It's kind of what it sounds like to me. But anyways,
that's good. They say as long as they're talking about you, it doesn't matter what they say. As long as you keep talking. Number 2, and you might be right, because here, take a long bath and have a sweet sleep. So, according to researchers at the University of Freiburg in Germany, a regular warm bath can have a more significant effort on mood, than physical exercise. Taking regular afternoon baths has been associated with a moderate but persistent lift in mood amongst people with depression. I'll read the next item so that I'm not reading most of this. Number 3, it's a 3-letter word, cry. Learning to cry is a critical step for mental health and general happiness. When the moment of distress is hitting, the only thing that we many times may need is to let our sadness find a safe escape route. Studies have found that emotional tears contain more mood-regulating manganese than any other type of tears. Crying activates the parasympathetic nervous system and restores the body to a state of balance.
Yes.
Here's number 4. Meet your friends, like we were talking about earlier. When important events happen, whether good or bad, sharing them with others, make them come to life.
Right.
Last one in this article, surround yourself with nature. Being in nature reduces anger, fear, stress, and increases pleasant feelings. Exposure to nature not only makes us feel better emotionally, but it contributes to our physical well-being, reducing blood pressure, heart rate, muscle tension, and the production of stress hormones. So this article, we'll put this in our podcast as well. It's Forbes.com. And this is a woman, Paloma Gomez. I'm an expert in leadership and proactivity and entrepreneurship. So this is she who wrote this article. It's quick and easy read and does remind us that chocolate can make you happy. So chocolate and wine. That's what I got out of this article.
Okay. So I think I'd like if you're cool with this. So I think I had one point came up for me with each of those 5 strategies that you gave. So if you feed me back just what each of the strategies was, I'll give what my thought was on each one of those 5, if that works.
1, give yourself a pleasure.
Okay, so giving yourself a pleasure is sort of like rewarding yourself for engaging in good habits. I like to do what I call power sessions each day, where I schedule 3 different blocks of time, and it might only be a 10-minute block or a 20-minute block. And what I do is I schedule something that I'm only doing that activity for that amount of time. Everything else goes away, and I'm just focused on the one activity for that time. And what I find is that my energy and my creative powers are totally focused on that one thing. And then when that time is up, boom, I move on to the next thing. And when I complete all 3 things in the day, I give myself a reward. Maybe it's a piece of chocolate, because yes, I do like chocolate too. And then what I find is, and I celebrate that, I give myself a big woohoo. I actually get up and yell, or I give a big fist pump and do what Tony Robbins calls a power move. And my body then starts to crave it because like you had success and you celebrated and you changed the chemistry of your body, and boom, then your body's like, I want more of that. So we start to look for opportunities to give ourselves the pleasure of completing those power sessions in this case. Number 2.
Right. Okay, cool. I'm gonna give it with you at the same time so we can stay on task. Okay. So give yourself pleasure. I'm gonna make mine short and sweet.
Okay.
Yoga, Pilates, or Yin. That says it all. That's what I do every single day.
Perfect.
Let's go to number 2. So take a long bath or have a sweet sleep.
We know that, and I've experienced this because we've got a great spa here in the Ottawa area called, this is a free plug for them, Le Nordique. Mm-hmm. And I love going there and hanging out in the saunas and doing the contrast between the hot and then standing under the cold waterfall. And they have a newer part of the spa. It's a salt cave. And then you go in the water, and the water is actually even denser than the Dead Sea. So you completely float in it, completely suspended, and the tension just leaves your body. And it's a nice warm temperature, and it's dark, and you just feel totally supported and at ease. And we've all taken that hot shower after a cold or stressful day, and how good that feels to just relax and drain away all the stressors.
Right. And what I wanted to read this one other point because you talked about bath, and then I'll give you mine. By increasing core body temperature, warm baths help strengthen and synchronize the circadian rhythms and daily fluctuations in behavior and biochemistry that affect every one of our organs, including the brain. So I would like to say that I definitely take long baths, but I do something else. And this is kind of crazy, and I'm happy to be transparent. I take 2 to 3 showers a day. And I'll explain why. Before yoga, after yoga, and before bed. Now, I spend a lot of time in the water. I'm, if I'm not that I'm a swimmer, but for me, and they're hot showers. And then, so anyway, I won't get into
Are you sure
all
you're
that.
not a Pisces?
Yes, I'm married to a Pisces by association. So I'm a fire sign, right? So let's talk about crying. So cry is number 3.
So crying, like as mentioned in the article, the crying, they've done studies on the chemical composition of tears. And what they noticed is that the chemical composition of tears of joy and laughter and happiness have a much different constituency than tears of grief or depression, and different chemical pathways are activated in the body. So allowing yourself to cry just creates not only a physical release of the emotion, but also a chemical release of the different chemicals in the body.
Okay, so I'll mention this. This happened really like the first time for me the other day. I was in my yoga class. It wasn't yoga, so I want to identify. It was a mindful Pilates class, which is specific. And then there was a class after that, which was Yin, and that was 75 minutes. So what happens is in both of these classes, there's a deep meditation. And this deep meditation, for some unknown reason to me, just brought me into a state of tears. And I thought, I'm going to stay with this because you were talking about that. First of all, I'm in the class. I'm not going to get up and leave. And I had an eye pillow. That was okay. So yes, I do believe also that is very important. Now, not necessarily walking around the store or just walking around. You cry when you have to cry. But this state of meditation brought me right to that moment. And it just felt like it was the right thing to do. And it felt really good. And then I continued with the rest of my session because it was there and my body was prepared for that. So whatever happened, it happened. It went through me and I took it through my practice and came out and felt terrific.
That's awesome.
All right. Yeah. So here's number 4 of the 5.
Okay.
We talked about this. Meet your friends.
So meeting your friends is just, there's something special about that friend that you have that, you could go months or even a couple of years without seeing them. And then when you finally get to connect with them again, or even speaking to them, and then when you finally get to connect with them, it's like you pick right up where you left off. And having those types of friends in your life that just totally get you on and see you for the amazing, wonderful, empowered being of light that you are is so, what's the word I'm looking for? Empowering. You just feel like you can totally let your guard down and totally be who you are with that person in the moment. And what a gift to have people like that in your life. They just see us and we can see them for exactly who we are. We don't have stories. We're not trying to impress anybody. We're not trying to sell something to anybody. We're just two friends hanging out.
What you see is what you get.
Yeah, exactly.
So thank you for that. Let me read this short 2 sentences and then I'll share mine.
Sure.
Connection and sharing is what helps us through our darkest times. Connections heal, says New York City-based psychotherapist Susan Solomon. We can take 2 paths when challenged by life. We can condemn ourselves to isolation or open our hearts, share our pain, and immediately feel better. So when it comes to meet your friends, I agree. I have something called Fun Friday. This is important to me. That's what happens on Friday. It's Fun Friday. If it's fun, I'm going to do it. So on a Friday, this is what happens to me. It could be work, but it's still based on meeting friends. And some of my clients are friends and some of my friends are clients. So it's important to me to have that as part of my structure. And then, of course, it's important to have that happen because we choose to get together and it could be spontaneous. But it is part of my core value to have that friendship and that connection. Core value is love and family. So when I'm looking at my schedule, it doesn't slip by me that I would be with friends because Friday is the time that I know I put a friend in or I'll make a call to a friend. They may not know why I'm doing that, but they're my friends. And I know that if I've spoken to them on a Friday, then they'll know they're part of my, Fun Friday scheme.
Exactly.
And now,
they're part of the fun bunch.
Yeah, exactly. That's where they got to go. And me too. And it usually always makes me smile.
Right.
Okay, here's number 5 in this article. Okay. Surround yourself with nature.
Right. So the Japanese have an amazing thing that they call forest bathing. And basically you go out into the forest and embrace the forest. You go out and with a mindfulness, observing the trees, listening for the birds and other animals, appreciating all of the smells of the forest, the dew glistening on the leaves, the rustle of the leaves as the wind goes through the trees or as you kick through them as they're lying on the ground in the fall, or even the rustle of pine straw, when the pine trees drop all their needles, it has a different sound to it than the leaves from the other trees. So just being out there, it totally reconnects us to who we are. We have an opportunity to disconnect ourselves from all of the distractions that happen in the city life, so to speak. And we can much more easily connect back to because in nature, there's something in nature that's in all of us. And when we can be out there in that nature without the distractions, it's more easy to find it. And in fact, I love to do it in bare feet. I take my shoes off and then I go in barefoot. And you get dirty feet, but so what? It's like a kid running in the mud in bare feet, getting the mud between your toes.
Take a bath after.
Exactly. Or a hot shower, exactly.
Yes. Okay, that's fun. I like that. I'll read another quick paragraph before I
Sure.
put in my 2 cents. The mind-body connection happens on both a physical and a chemical level. These connections between what is going on in your mind and heart and what is happening in your body form the psycho-emotional roots of health and disease. Taking care of your body when your mind starts to be tired is the first step for quickly coming back on the track. So when we talk about surround yourself with nature, I'd like to remember, or I'd like to share a great memory. I like remembering it too. We had a country house in the Laurentians and we had a rowboat and a canoe. because the rowboat's different, and a kayak. So we would get in the canoe, and you can imagine that the water is still, and you very quietly use your paddle, use your oar, and you get to the middle of the lake, and you just sit right there in the middle of that body of water. You can see the reflection. I like the morning runs a little bit better than the ones at night, because I was a little bit worried about bats. But, you forget about the bats. It's beautiful at night, too.
I'm totally there with you in the middle of the lake. It's perfectly still water.
Gorgeous. It sounds great. It smells great. If the lake is clear, you can look down and see fish. And if you can check what's going on underneath you with whatever method you have or whatever you've done before you've gone in the water, you can look down and see what's there. But better yet, look up and see those beautiful, beautiful stars. Being surrounded by bright stars. And one other thought I want to share with you, it was a wonderful moment when we were in the middle of the ocean, and we were in a 65-foot motorboat. It was a motor sailor.
Okay.
The stars, when you're in the middle of, like, the lake is great too. The stars are the stars. They're beautiful. Depends on which body of water that you're in. So obviously we were in a different body of water with that motor sailor. But the stars were so bright. And when we looked around us, there were other boats and there were yachts around us. So we weren't the only ones in this body of water. It's like,
exactly.
We're in this boat and you're in that boat, and we're all looking at the same, $1 million sky.
Yep.
And it was so beautiful. And that was really immersing ourselves in nature, because we were obviously, in the middle of the water. It was great. Yeah. That's such a wonderful way to surround ourselves with nature.
Beautiful. So I'd like to share a couple more things before we wrap this up, and then feel free to, and I'd like for you to comment on them too. First thing is, in the story you just shared about being in that motor sail out in the ocean and looking up at the stars and how bright they were. And here's the funny part. If we talked about habits and how we perceive things, the stars are always the same brightness. They've never changed. Their brightness is always there. It's what's around us, how much light pollution is around us in the earth, in the city, versus when we get out in the middle of the ocean or in the middle of a lake somewhere in the northern part of Canada or eastern part of Canada, wherever it may be. All of a sudden, we can much more clearly see what was always there.
Right. Without the city lights and
without the distractions of what's around us, right? And isn't life like that?
Right. When we're looking up and it's dark and we're looking up, we can see that. During the day we're not able to do that. Right.
Exactly.
And we probably don't even think about looking up sometimes.
Exactly.
No, that's a very good point. Let me ask you a question. Maybe you had something else to say. I don't want to interrupt you.
I've got 2 more points, but sure.
Okay, just throw this in answer whenever you feel you can share it. I'd like to know if you can share with us one of your deepest moments that you realized that there was nothing to be sad about.
Okay, and I can actually tie it in with one of the other comments that I wanted to make, so that will be perfect.
Okay, great.
So in this article that we've been discussing, these five aspects, there was a point where you mentioned how our emotions is intimately tied up with our nervous system and other processes within our body. And I remember going back 15 years ago, sitting down with a psychoneuroimmunologist by the name of Candace Pert. Now, Candace Pert was the discoverer of the opiate receptors in the brain. And she wrote an amazing book called Molecules of Emotion. Now, she has since passed away, but I remember actually meeting her at a conference I was at and sitting down. There's a whole bunch of us actually sitting down. And here's this PhD psychoneuroimmunologist. And we go outside from this conference after she's given this keynote address, and we're sitting on the lawn around a flagpole, barefoot. And we're just having this awesome discussion about how emotions work in the body and what are the emotional receptors. And what her research was showing was that not only were there molecules the molecules of emotion, the chemistry in our brain, but those same receptor sites for those same molecules of emotion were present in the muscles on either side of our spine and throughout our body, but also in the, everybody says, I've got a gut feeling. So you've got like a big group of nerves in the gut. So there's receptors there for it. But the biggest one for me was that there were receptors on our immune system cells that responded to the same molecules of emotion. And that's when I realized it didn't matter what emotion you had, happy, sad, joy, whatever. It was all just different ways of us expressing who we are and shifting our perceptions in the moment, because that's what the emotions were about, shifting perception in the moment. I feel more awake now.
Yeah. Thank you. You said two things. Was that the combination of the two?
That was the combination, yes.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Well, let me ask you about our BU moment. Mm-hmm. There are two things. One, did we discuss where are you today?
We have not yet.
I would love to hear where you are at this moment. And what does that mean? So let's explain to our audience what this moment is. So there's our BU, as we know, our BU guest moment and our BU moment. And right now, this is about telling our audience and each other where we are and what we're doing.
Right. So it's again, it's fun. I get to combine this with the last point that I was wanting to make. This is perfect. You'd think we'd rehearse this or something.
I know. Well, it's good. It's easy.
So I'm as usual, or mostly usual, I'm in Ottawa, Canada's capital. And I'm just loving being in my little office / recording studio. And today, I was really reflecting on how, when we are being present with people, how things shift. So my focus right now is just being present with you and by extension with our audience. And what I realized, and this ties back into the article you were talking about smiling, how it's contagious. And it's actually been shown through research that when you smile at somebody, they cannot not smile. Whether it's just a little crook of the corner of their mouth, it happens before they're even consciously aware of it. You cannot help but smile when somebody else smiles at you. So smiling truly is contagious. And so that was my focus today, was to smile at every person that I interacted with, whether that meant somebody I was walking by in the street or at my local coffee shop here or patients in the office today. And so as we're having this conversation, I'm actually smiling right now through the microphone at you.
Oh, thank you. And I could feel that. I can feel that in your voice, and I appreciate that. Well, I'm in Toronto, not our city's capital.
No, but it's the province's capital.
Okay, I'm in the province's capital, and I'm in my bridge room, overlooking the evening gardens with some very nice light in the background. So I am surrounded by my view of nature with my nifty 7.5 pound dumbbell, which I threatened I was going to move it up to 10 pounds. So I guess I'm going to stop threatening and I'm going to do it. And I'm here today. And one of the things that I want to tell you, because you can't see it, is I had this awesome hair day, and I went and had my hair done because tomorrow I'm going to be doing a video in the morning. So I went and had it done today. So that makes me smile. So smiling right back at you, because, sometimes you feel good, and then you feel okay. And then sometimes you just feel really great because everything. So, physically I took care of everything. If I could only stay like this until tomorrow morning, that would be perfect, but I'll have to do it all over again so that I can, put the camera on. But I'm feeling really good and smiling right back at you. But perhaps that's because you smiled first, but I worked hard to do that to get here today.
Right.
I wanted to make sure that I did everything I needed to do to have the right frame of mind, to be here in my bridge room, and to have this podcast with the right attitude discussing sadness, because again, I didn't want to make sadness this down podcast where it would be like, oh, I'm feeling down. I wanted to be able to discuss it and bring in the elements of what we do in our day-to-day life and in our philosophies and theories with our businesses and with each other, on how we keep ourselves out of and go through sadness, so that we're not going to avoid it altogether, but how do we move through it? So I'm here in my bridge room with you tonight and our audience, and it's amazing because it is tonight.
Absolutely.
Now, let me ask you one other thing.
Sure.
Let's talk about our BU final moment. Let's talk about our takeaway from our conversation this evening, from the research that we did prior to recording this podcast. What would be your main take? It could be more than one, but if you want to share a main takeaway with us, please do.
The main takeaway is let's put this instead of putting in a negative, starting with a negative thing, let's put it in a more positive way. Embrace all of your emotions, no matter what they are, in the moment that you're experiencing them. It's the only way through them. If you keep suppressing them and pushing them down, eventually they're going to resurface and you're going to have to deal with them later. It's actually, as overwhelming as it can be in the moment, it's much more efficient and resilience building for you to be with it in the moment rather than to try and deal with it later. So use some of the strategies we've shared with you tonight and be resilient.
Thank you for that. Yeah. I have a two-part takeaway, and it has to do with nature, so hopefully that will still qualify for me to have one moment. So part of my first takeaway is you with your dirty feet in the nature. Like that really made me realize how being in nature does truly make me as a city girl. Like, it's amazing because I'm really a city girl, but yet being in nature really does make me happy. So I'll take that to the canoe and being in the water, or the motor sailor, or a sailboat, or whatever vessel we're on, being somewhere where nature is around us, that truly brought me to some happy moments. So thank goodness we have our memories, because these memories give us the ability to repaint the picture, to share. Yes. And I think about storytellers, and I think about Errol Gerson. Yeah. And the way he tells stories, and having these thoughts and having these memories. And the one about you telling me about you being in nature with your feet, I was thinking, oh no. And then as soon as I thought, oh no, I thought, oh, okay, you enjoyed it. So I went with it because of the way that you described it and how we were both able to see the bright stars. So my takeaway is that when we describe what we're discussing, we really paint the picture. We can bring that other person right there into that moment. In the way you discussed how Errol was asking his student to be grateful for the bed. That was a great moment, the way he explained it. And it took me right there. So telling a story and listening intently, being in the moment, like you said, truly is a wonderful place and time, because we can get lost in it, and lost in a good way. So the sadness can be lightened, the sadness can be expedited, or the sadness can be worked through if we understand the moment that we're in and we take it for what it is.
Exactly.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Thank you. That was awesome. So I think that's a great place to wrap it for this episode, don't you?
I'm a little sad that we have to do that.
Didn't Carol Burnett used to have a song? I'm so glad we had this time together.
That's right. She did. And she used to pull on her ear to say goodnight to her grandma.
Exactly. So I am so glad that we had this time together. So don't be sad that it's over. There's another great quote. Don't be sad that it's over, but be happy that it had happened at all.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So sadness is a good thing when you can work through it and understand it.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Sharing is caring. Tell your friends about conversations worth having on BU Network. We really appreciate your reviews, and you can do that on Apple Podcast. Thank you.
For show notes and links, go to www.b-u.network/podcasts. Connect with us via our website, www.b-u.network, and build a relationship with us. Sign up to receive information, updates, and your free video training at www.b-u.network/pro.
We're looking forward to hearing from you, and thank you for being with us. Ciao.
Ciao, babies.